A blade, cold as ice, pressed against Jonathan Hale's throat. He jolted awake, heart pounding wildly, and before he could make sense of what was happening, a knee pinned his chest to the creaky wooden bed. My father died in this house last night, and you were the last person to see him alive. The voice was low and thunderous, like a desert storm about to break loose. Moonlight poured through the window frame, revealing the face of a stranger. Long black hair, eyes sharp as steel. She was breathtakingly beautiful, yet carried a merciless edge that could end a life in a single stroke. This was the beginning of a blood-soaked night on the frontier, and you will not believe what happens next. If you have not subscribed yet, hit that button now, because what is coming will be even crazier than this. Jonathan's hands hung limp. He knew that if he breathed the wrong way, blood would spill across the wooden floor. Under his nails there was still blood. The blood he had tried to hold back for Elias Crow, the girl's father. But now that truth could not save him. If I wanted him dead, Jonathan said, his voice gravelly but controlled, I would not have spent the whole night changing his bandages. The tip of the knife trembled, not from fear, but from a tightening rage. Her eyes were like a blade driven straight into him, searching for a lie. Moonlight washed over her body, a deerskin dress embroidered with silver beads, hair smoked with herbs, her hot breath close against his face. Prove it, she hissed. Jonathan tilted his head toward the small table. Your father's medicine pouch is still there. The bloody strips of cloth I changed all night are still there. If I had wanted to kill him, I would not have touched them. She froze. On the table, the deep red bandages still carried the scent of mugwort and willow bark. Her fingers brushed the familiar leather pouch, her father's constant companion. She ground her teeth. You could be setting up a scene. Her voice had lost some of its certainty. Jonathan breathed slowly, his gaze calm. Before he breathed his last, Elias told me about Talon, about the raids, and about the betrayal that was coming. The name Talon made the air thicken. The knife in her hand suddenly paused, her eyes flickering with surprise. Someone out there had a hand in Elias's death, and Jonathan might be the only key to finding out who. The knife pressed deeper into Jonathan's throat. The girl's voice hissed through her teeth. You know nothing about my uncle. I know he would bring death to both white people and the Apache. Your father wanted to stop that. Her legs pinned his ribs like shackles. Rage flashed in her eyes. My father died because of the greed of white people, because of men like you. Then, Jonathan did not flinch. That may be, but only men like me could get close enough to Talon's camp to stop him. The air tightened. Sweat rolled down Jonathan's neck, and the moonlight shone like a second blade. At last, she whispered, I am Selina Crow. Elias is my father. The knife paused. I watched the cabin from the hilltop. I saw you carry my father in. I saw the light burning until dawn. Then you know, I tried to save him. Selina bit her lip. Her chest heaved. You failed, but perhaps not because you wanted to. She leaned in, her warmth brushing Jonathan's face. Talon will strike in 3 days. It will begin at the Canyon Creek trading post, and then the whole town. Jonathan frowned. How do you know? A cold smile cut across her face. Because he told me himself before I realized his true face. Selina sprang to her feet. The knife twirled in her hand, moonlight pooling on the steel. She moved with the grace of a hunting animal. Her sun-darkened skin shimmered silver under the night sky. You want to stop Talon? She pronounced each word slowly. You need me. A white man alone in Apache territory will die before he ever sees the camp. Jonathan sat up, hand pressed to the chill at his throat. And why should I trust you? For what reason? Selina stopped. Moonlight lit her bare shoulder. Her voice dropped low and deep like a war drum. Because you are the only white man who ever tried to save an Apache instead of taking from him. She turned, her dark eyes flaring. And because I need you alive to help me kill my own uncle. The air exploded. The vow of revenge twisted everything. Enemy turned into reluctant ally. And now they had only 3 days before Talon struck. Dawn had not fully broken when they left the wooden house. Jonathan sat astride a chestnut warhorse, while Selina walked beside him, her wrists bound tightly with coarse rope. To anyone looking on, she might as well have been a prisoner. And in truth, that was the only way Jonathan could lead her across land, soaked with hatred, without being seen as an enemy by either side. The rope was stained with blood, but Selina did not complain. The pain on her skin was nothing compared to the fire inside her, the fire that had been burning since her father fell. Jonathan broke the silence. Tell me about him. Talon. Selina inhaled deeply, her eyes flashing with a light that was at once furious and grieving. He was once a respected leader, standing beside Koshi's. But gold and promises from white men turned him into a traitor. What kind of promises? Jonathan pressed. She stopped and faced him. They promised him his own domain, made him a leader as long as he helped sweep away the Apache they labelled as troublemakers. A bitter smile crossed her lips. And he believed them. Jonathan tightened the reins and dismounted, pretending to adjust a horseshoe to avoid meeting her gaze. So he did not merely betray his people, he even led troops to the winter camp. Selina's eyes went dark. Women, children, the elderly, driven straight into the muzzles of guns. My father discovered it and risked everything to stop it. Her voice trembled not from weakness, but from a pain that cut deep. Those words made Jonathan catch in his throat. He had seen blood and stepped over corpses, but imagining children slaughtered felt like a knife twisting into his heart. He reached, intending to touch her shoulder, but the rope stopped him short. Selina looked up, her voice hard as steel. That is why I must stop him. Not only for revenge, but for justice. Then, suddenly, the sound of hooves rose over the ridge. Jonathan flinched and pulled the reins hard. A cavalry squad appeared far off, moving toward them. Selina clenched her teeth and whispered, "Do not forget, you are leading a prisoner. If we are seen, both of us will die right here." The air snapped tight as a drawn bow. The sun was lowering into the narrow canyon. Jonathan built the fire, while Selina knelt at the stream, rinsing wild greens. Water splashed up, soaking the deerskin dress that clung to her sun-darkened skin. Jonathan swallowed hard and tried to look into the flames, but his eyes kept stealing glances. "You are looking," Selina said flatly without turning. "Sorry." Jonathan cleared his throat. She gave a small smile. "I did not say I was bothered." When she stepped closer, the wet dress hugged every soft movement. Standing before Jonathan, Selina tilted her head, her eyes deep as an abyss. "If you want to work with me, you must understand one thing." "What is that?" "I do not submit." Her voice hardened, each step lithe like a wild creature. "There have been white men who thought Apache women were only things to possess. They learned their lesson with blood." Jonathan did not look away. His gaze was steady. "I am not like them." Selina raised an eyebrow, a half smile on her lips. "Then what kind of man are you, Jonathan Hale?" He could lie, but the truth slipped out. A man who has killed too much and saved too little, and now wonders if he has the courage to stand beside someone who would risk everything for justice. Selina's eyes softened slightly. For a moment, Jonathan saw the heavy loss beneath that steel shell. "You saved my father instead of leaving him," she said quietly. "That takes courage." Jonathan laughed, a bitter sound. Or I was simply too tired of the blood on my hands. Selina knelt beside him, her knee touching his. Her fingers brushed his wrist, where the pulse beat steady. Maybe both, but that is why you are the ally I need. The fire in her eyes mirrored the fire in him. Selina, he said softly. Yeah? If we go down this road, one of us may never return. Her smile was gentle and edged with sorrow. Then we must make sure something is worth the sacrifice. No, when their lips met, it was not weakness, but a beginning. Two lost shards found each other in the wilderness. At that moment, a distant howl cut through the air. Selina froze, and the kiss broke into empty space. Jonathan strained his eyes toward the dark canyon. The enemy never allowed them much peace. On the third day, they finally tracked the camp of Talon, a narrow canyon, about 20 miles, or roughly 32 kilometers, from the military road. From the edge of the cliff, Jonathan studied it through binoculars. At least 30 men, half of them Apache warriors, the rest white mercenaries. The air reeked of liquor, smoke, and violence. The big tent in the center, Selina whispered, pointing downward. That is where he gives his orders. Jonathan looked closer. The camp was laid out like a fortress. Guards posted in every direction. Horses penned inside a ring of stone. Weapons stacked high beside the fires. If he had not known better, he would have mistaken it for a proper military outpost. How do we get inside? Jonathan asked. We do not, Selina replied, her eyes flashing with danger. Only you. Talon knows my face, but a white man bringing goods and weapons, he will see you as an ally. Jonathan lowered the binoculars, frowning. That was not our plan. The plan has changed, she said, stepping into his line of sight. In the blazing sunlight, her figure stood out sharply against the grey stone. I will stay and cover you. When you get into trouble, you will need these hands. Selina lifted her Winchester, her movements crisp and deliberate. There was no other choice. Jonathan nodded. An hour later, he rode straight into the camp, leading a mule loaded with weapons, spoils from the bandits he had cut down before. Suspicious eyes followed him, but no one fired a shot. Talon appeared, imposing as a man used to power. He was tall, hair shot with black and silver, eyes cold and calculating. A white man with gifts, Talon said, his English thick with an Apache lilt. What do you want in return? Jonathan slowly dismounted, avoiding any sudden movement. Information, a safe route, and a chance to make some profit together. Talon gave a dry laugh. Money? What kind? The kind you get from knowing which settlements are poorly defended and easiest to plunder, Jonathan replied, then pulled back the tarp to reveal brand new army rifles. Greed flashed in Talon's eyes. Army weapons. Taken from a supply wagon, yes? So, you have more than that. Jonathan remained silent and let him draw his own conclusions. They haggled for hours, like two hardened traders. Jonathan revealed just enough to keep Talon interested while extracting information. The first target was Canyon Creek tomorrow morning, then Cedar Falls, followed by a string of attacks to split the army forces. You want to join? Talon finally growled. Then prove it. Tomorrow morning you ride with me. Kill white people the way you sell to them. Jonathan swallowed. He knew that if he let the plan unfold, dozens would die. All right, he answered, but I need proof to give to my Eastern partners, something that shows you are not deceiving me. What kind of proof? Talon narrowed his eyes. Documents. Letters. Something that proves a bigger backer is funding you. For a moment, Talon's smile stalled. How do you know? No one pays for 30 men equipped with army rifles without a source of funds backing them. Jonathan said calmly. I used to work for those people. They value secrecy and efficiency. After a few seconds of hesitation, Talon nodded and waved him along. Follow me. Inside the tent, Jonathan found a map crisscrossed with markings, letters to officers, and a supply roster. This was not merely looting. It was a carefully disguised plan for genocide. Impressive, Jonathan muttered, committing every detail to memory. Who in the government is involved? Colonel Harrison, Fort McKinney, Talon answered, pouring whiskey. He times troop movements so they are gone when we strike. In return, he climbs higher in politics. Everyone else takes the blame. Jonathan took the glass, his heart pounding. Harrison, an ambitious man willing to sacrifice anyone to get ahead. For long-term cooperation, Talon toasted. Jonathan lifted his glass too, then threw the whiskey straight into his face and slammed a hammering punch into his throat. Talon collapsed, choking. Jonathan snatched up the stack of papers and bolted outside. Shouts tore through the camp. Guns cracked in a staccato. Jonathan vaulted onto his horse and raced for the canyon mouth. Bullets hissed past his ears, dirt and stones erupting. Just then, a rifle crack rang from the cliffside. A pursuer toppled from his saddle. Selina, precise with a gun, had taken position. Jonathan rode out as the sun dropped, the rocks stained red. Selina waited, her Winchester still smoking. You get what you needed? She asked, eyes sharp. Jonathan held up the papers. Enough to hang Harrison. But Talon is alive, and he knows us. Selina cantered alongside, her voice cold as steel. Then we must reach Fort McKinney before he does. They streaked into the dark, carrying proof of betrayal and the faint hope that justice might still have a place in a land where trust exists only behind the muzzle of a gun. The morning sun gilded the stone walls of Fort McKinney as Jonathan and Selina rode through the gate beneath the truce flag. In Jonathan's saddlebag lay the papers ripped from Talon's tent writings that could topple an entire corrupt network. General Abram Morrison, commander of the fort, received them in a room thick with the scent of tanned leather and dried ink. He listened with the weary eyes of a man who had seen too much frontier politics. But when Jonathan opened the saddlebag and laid out each piece of evidence, supply rosters, payment vouchers, handwritten letters bearing signatures, the old general's face hardened, like steel struck by a hammer. If this is real, Morrison said slowly, each word heavy as lead, we are looking at treason. It is real, Selina answered, her voice soft but unshaken. My uncle believed that standing with the strong would save our people. He never understood, in the eyes of men like Colonel Silas Harrison, we were all pawns to be sacrificed. The warrant for Harrison's arrest was signed that very day. When the military police stormed his office, they seized sealed letters and secret ledgers. The web he had woven through merchants, contractors, and even a few local lawmakers unravelled like torn netting. In the territorial capital, word spread like prairie fire. Harrison marched out of the post in shackles, his face ashen, crying his innocence. With the funding severed, Talon's plan collapsed. His white allies fled or were jailed. The raids he had set in motion stalled indefinitely for lack of bullets, lack of horses, lack of protection within the army itself. But every victory leaves behind its fragments. By late afternoon, Selina stood alone on the hilltop behind the fort, gazing toward the valley where Elias Crow lay at rest. The wind lifted her black hair. She wore a blue dress stitched with white, a gift from General Morrison's wife, as if to replace the blood-stained deerskin she had once carried. He would be proud, Jonathan said quietly as he approached, eyes resting on the simple gravestone. Or he would be disappointed, Selina whispered. I ended his brother's bloodline. I was the one who drove Talon into a corner with no escape. Jonathan laid a hand on her shoulder, this time without hesitation. You stopped a war. You saved the lives of settlers and your own people alike. That is not a sin. Selina leaned lightly against his chest, letting her heart find that rare, steady rhythm. And what about us? The world does not change just because one villain is dragged into the light. Jonathan lifted his gaze to the deep violet sky as the stars began to show. The frontier was still wild. Violence would not vanish with a single arrest warrant. Yet perhaps that was the very reason this land needed those willing to choose differently. We will build something better, he said firmly. Together. 6 months later, on the porch of a small wooden cabin on a Colorado hillside, Jonathan and Selina stood in silence, their eyes fixed on the green valley stretching below. A silver stream wound its way through the young grass, and in the distance the snow-capped mountains caught the afternoon light. The breeze carried the scent of pine and damp earth, as if the land itself had been washed clean of every memory of blood and fire. Selina wore a simple indigo dress, her belly showing the gentle curve of pregnancy. Her calloused hands bore witness to half a year of pioneer labour, chopping wood, tilling soil, raising fences. She was no longer only the Apache warrior sealed inside her grief, but a woman who had learned to plant, to tend the hearth, and to nurture hope. Jonathan stood beside her, one hand resting on the doorframe, his gaze distant toward the ridges. A man who once knew only gunsmoke and corpses had now found what he thought forever lost, a home. On this unforgiving frontier, he and Selina had built something that had never been theirs before, a place to belong. Selina stepped closer, her hand resting gently on his. The warmth passed between them, and Jonathan turned. In her eyes, shimmered pride mingled with tenderness. Within the modest cabin, they had begun a life no longer hunted, no longer bargaining with blood. Only two people, once broken by fate, now finding each other to build a family. Selina lifted her gaze, her belly stirring as the child within shifted. Jonathan bent and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, and in that moment they both understood. They had sown the seed of something greater than any victory, the future. A family, a home, a new beginning on a frontier, still raw with danger, but also heavy with promise. Reading this story in its entirety, I see more than a fierce love ballad forged in the fire of the Wild West. It is a journey of redemption and the pursuit of justice. It reveals how thin the line is between hatred and trust, between death and survival. The greatest beauty does not lie in victory, but in how two shattered souls found each other and dared to plant the seed of tomorrow. To me, that is the true courage of those who lived on the frontier. If you enjoyed this journey, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share so we can ride together into the next stories.